Well, welcome back in, everyone. I'm Ian. Today, we got modifying for joint pain and injuries with a specific focus today for the lower body. So when we're talking about the primal movements, we're looking at hip dominant, such as the deadlifts, RDLs, kettlebell swings, knee dominant moves like squats and lunges, vertical push and pulls, horizontal push and pulls when we're lying down, and core, not just the abs, but the lower trunk of your body with planks, Russian twists. So the important thing to remember and what we do as F45 coaches is what we're providing. F in F45 is for functional. F45 trains our bodies to maximize efficiency in everyday life. Things like sitting down, that's a squat. Getting the strength to stand ourselves up. Picking something off the floor, that's a hip hinge. And then something like reaching the top shelf at the grocery store, at home, whatever, in your kitchen, that's a vertical push. So all about this is function in our everyday lives that will translate with this training. Our goal is to provide an engaging and effective workout for everyone. That's one of the big things I love about F45. We're able to accept everyone, whatever the workout is. It's our job as coaches to provide that engaging and effective workout. So it's always important to be able to identify the pain, the movements, and how we can approach them, how we can help still get them that workout in. Back pain, specifically with the hinge movements. I mentioned earlier, deadlifts, RDLs, kettlebell swings. How are they lifting? What's their form? Are they lifting with their back? Because bad form engages the wrong muscle groups and definitely can lead to injury. Then we'd look at range of motion. Find the painless range of motion. Have a conversation with them, even if it's a short conversation, middle of the workout. See where they're at. For example, on the RDL, standard form, we want to lower that barbell down to about mid-shin, then really get that stretch in our hamstring and our glutes. For the member that's injured, if they're feeling that pain, once they get below the knee, then we stop it right at the knee. And we're only going to go that far. Have them still think about where they're supposed to be engaging their muscles, still in the hamstring and your glutes as you pull it back up, right? We don't want to be pulling with the back. And then once you go through that range of motion, we can look at things like weight selection and variations. Switching from a barbell to something like a dumbbell or kettlebell can be more ergonomic for them. And let them work with the movement that we're doing. Another thing to look at can be switching to a wider stance. When we go to something like a sumo stance for a deadlift, that can alleviate pain in the back as you open up your hips more and puts more of that pressure in your lower body more. And something for a kettlebell swing, a dead stop swing, that really enforces the proper hip hinge because you're going to reset after every rep. They're not yanking at their back as they're going through. Whenever I intro that kettlebell swing, I'm like, remember everyone, this is a lower body focused move. Push through with your hips and your glutes. Don't yank your back. Don't go up with your shoulders. Majority of that's coming from the lower body. So it's always important to do that. And then finally, with this back pain, we're building up on core strength. So if end all be all, they can't do a hinge, they're having real trouble with their back on these movements. If they have an injury, a bigger injury, anything like that, work with them to help build back up that core. Bird dogs, bed bugs when they're low to the ground with the planks and even the hip thrusts, working with that, whether it's even body weight, banded, think about what you can do to help them come back from the injury, build themselves back up. Another very common thing that we'll see members come in with, knee pain, and we're looking at things at lunges and squats. First thing we're going to be looking at toes. When they're squatting down, when they're lunging forward, lunging back, you want to power through those heels. And one good cue that I always throw at people is if they're having trouble staying on those heels, lift their big toe up. That's going to put all the weight back on their heels and keep their form in line. When we're looking at squats, another big thing is hinging forward, their chest almost parallel to the ground when they're coming down, and that's their low squat. Right. So instead of that, have them shift their weight back, have that chest upright, that proud chest to help engage those glutes, those hamstrings. That's going to take a lot of that stress off the quad, which in turn takes that stress off your knees. With lunges as well, leaning forward as you do that lunge can help alleviate, again, that quad strain that leads to that knee strain. Leaning forward puts that weight back onto your glutes and you're pushing right back up through your heel to get back to that standing position. Range of motion for this, have them squat low as they can without that pain. If you need to bring out a box, have them squat down to the box like we talked about earlier, sitting down on the chair, sitting down on the box. So we're really working with their knee pain and see where that squat lands. Weight selection and variations. Number one thing, body weight is effective. Talk to them, have them drop the weight. I know a lot of people want to lift the heavy weights, but if they're going to lead themselves to bigger injuries, body weight is just as effective as long as we're able to coach properly. when we're looking at lunges, when we're doing a reverse lunge, forward lunge, walking lunge. Turning that into a static lunge can definitely help control more, right? They're staying in one spot. They're not moving. They're only focused on that up and down, like a concentric and eccentric motion. And it's going to help reduce that dynamic pressure wherever they're feeling that pain. Reverse lunges, more bias on the glute. So forward lunges, more bias on the quad. So again, if they're having some knee pain, reverse lunge, that's going to help alleviate some of that pain so they can keep moving. Looking next at widening their stance. And I'm not talking about a sumo stance, just a little bit past shoulder width. That's going to help shift weight into their hips a little bit more, help them get a little deeper, work through some of that pain. And then also looking at tempo. Slowing things down helps them think about what they're supposed to be doing instead of just dropping down real fast with whatever they're doing with the squat and coming back up. Have them think about controlling their form with the tempo. All right. So going into hip pain, form and technique here, I can't say it enough. Power through the heels, not the toes. When members are doing lunges and they're losing balance, I can't do it. I can't go with heavy weights because I keep falling over. Have them think of train tracks, not a tight rope. A lot of the times I see them, they start in that shoulder width stance, stepping forward, stepping back on a tightrope. That's where they lose their balance. So tell them, keep that train track, stay on their own tracks as they're stepping forward, as they're stepping back. You want to find that range of motion where it's painless or limit the pain. So limit that squat, limit that lunge depth. Again, bring out a box if you need to. I find goblet squats very effective. They act as a counterbalance, helping them stay more upright, or they're not hinging forward, entering into that hip pain. Specifically in regards to the goblet squat, a lot of members will try to drop that weight, hold it between their legs as they squat. It drags them down more. So keeping that chest proud, whether it's a lighter weight, even if they do a goblet squat, that's going to act as a counterbalance, help the hip joint as they're squatting down. Now we're getting to sumo squats, different thing, not just widening that stance. We're going to stick our toes out. We want a wide range of motion, and then really feeling that on the inner abductor as we're going. We want to create more range of motion for those hip joints, engage those glutes more without having that hip pain as much with that range of motion of a normal squat. And then elevated heels. So bring out a couple of the small plates, the 2.5s, the 5s. That'll prop those heels up. It's just like weightlifting shoes, if you've seen those. Keeping them in more in an upright position, again, with the goblet squat, whatever the case is. Keeping that proud chest, get them squatting down a little bit more without having to have as much hip flexion as a normal squat would. Now this, I've been dealing with ankle pain for a while now, so I like this one. Big on the impact of it, the plyometrics of what we do, launching and landing on the balls of your feet. When we're talking about feet placement and where we're putting that, always think about those 3 points of contact with the floor. You want to be able to land evenly, distribute that weight evenly. So again, looking at how the member is jumping, landing, stepping, how they're landing with their feet. Controlled movement and variations for this, a little bit different than what we talked about before. Limit dynamic and explosive movements. Basically, these are the modifications we'll talk about in the intro. Take those jumps out. Squat jumps, we're going to turn that into a step out squat. You're still getting some of that dynamic movement, but we're taking out that explosiveness of it, right? With the squat jumps, step out squats. With the jump lunges, we'll go to those reverse lunges, stepping it in, stepping it out. Box jumps, those turn into box step ups. We're moving those explosive elements, but still looking at how they're landing with their feet, distributing weight evenly for those movements. Another big one would be limit or remove the elevations, right? If we're doing a Bulgarian split squat, have them do a split squat on the floor, wide, spread their legs out nice and wide, still going down, but we have an even floor to work with. That's going to help them out with their ankle pain. Calf raises, those can always be hard to balance. We have every bar out, doing that calf raise on the floor still. Both feet making contact, the front balls of your feet, and then slowing things down to help with the balance and strengthening of the ankle, right? Plyometrics, a lot of explosive movements, being able to slow that down so that they can control their balance better, their stability. So they're still working on strengthening the ankle back up as we're going. Lindsay?
I wanted to add too, I think you mentioned the wedges earlier for their feet.
Yeah.
A lot of the members don't understand that keeping your toes in front of the wedges versus on top of the wedges helps you grip the floor a little bit more. So you're not just leaning forward as you have those heels elevated, you're able to sink your hips down correctly. So I think that's really important to kind of remind them of as they're using them for the first time. Hey, your toes actually start in front of the wedges and your heels are what is elevated on those wedges.
Yes. Yeah. If you have wedges in your studio, that's important rather than just having them at an angle, complete angle with their body. If you're using the plates, perfectly fine as well. Just tuck them underneath your heel and then, yeah, they're good to go.
Love that.
And we'll take a look next time at the upper body. Again, primal movements, we're building up on these. So these are the basics. We'll use them in all different types of modalities. A lot of members coming in with something that they're working with. So we got to be ready to tackle that.
Have a great rest of your day, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you, Aaron.